In the escalating U.S.-Israeli war against Iran that erupted on February 28, 2026, Tehran has issued a stark declaration underscoring the reach of its axis of resistance network. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis, Ansar Allah, are just one call away from full participation, ready to activate and potentially close the strategic Bab al-Mandab Strait at Tehran's direction. This statement, echoed by senior Iranian officials and Houthi leaders in recent weeks, signals that the conflict, already marked by strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, the assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, and retaliatory missile barrages, could expand dramatically southward. As Iraqi militias and Hezbollah have already engaged, the Houthis' restraint so far has been notable, but Tehran's messaging highlights their role as a potential game-changer. By threatening to blockade the narrow waterway linking the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, the Houthis could transform a regional conflict into a global economic crisis, compounding the disruption already caused by Iran's effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. This article examines the origins and implications of Iran's claim, the Houthis' strategic positioning, and the far-reaching consequences if they fully enter the fray. The phrase "one call away" from Tehran reflects the deeply integrated command and control relationship between Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Quds Force, and the Houthis. Since the early 2010s, Iran has supplied the group with advanced weaponry, including anti-ship ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, and technical expertise, while providing training, funding, and ideological alignment. In the current war, Houthi paramount leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi has publicly declared that his forces have their fingers on the trigger, warning they stand ready to support Iran against U.S.-Israeli aggression. Iranian statements, including from the new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei, have hinted at opening new fronts, explicitly prodding the Houthis toward action. This coordination is not new. During the 2024-2025 Red Sea crisis, the Houthis disrupted global shipping in solidarity with Hamas and Iran, proving their willingness to act as Tehran's forward-deployed asymmetric force. Yet, as of mid-March 2026, they have largely held back from major new operations, citing internal calculations in Yemen, fear of devastating retaliation against their Red Sea ports like Hodeidah, and possible resource conservation. Tehran's one-call rhetoric serves dual purposes. It reassures domestic hardliners of Iran's enduring leverage and pressures Washington and Jerusalem by reminding them that the war's theater could widen instantly. At the heart of this threat lies the Bab al-Mandab Strait, a critical maritime choke point often called the Gate of Tears. Just 30 kilometers wide at its narrowest, it connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and serves as the gateway to the Suez Canal. Roughly 8.8 million barrels of oil pass through it daily, accounting for about 10 to 12% of global seaborne oil trade, along with massive volumes of liquefied natural gas, consumer goods, and raw materials linking Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Houthis already control much of Yemen's western Red Sea coastline, including key positions near the strait, giving them the physical ability to mine waters, deploy anti-ship missiles, drones, and small attack boats, or even board vessels. In past operations, they have demonstrated precision with Iranian-derived technology, loitering munitions, ballistic missiles capable of striking hundreds of kilometers away, and unmanned surface vessels. A full closure or sustained harassment campaign would not require permanent occupation. Sporadic attacks, mining, and threats alone could force shipping insurers to declare the route unnavigable, as seen in 2024 when attacks slashed traffic by over 50%. With the Strait of Hormuz already disrupted by Iranian actions, halting nearly 20% of global oil flows, a Houthi blockade of Bab el-Mandab would create a double choke point crisis, threatening up to 25 to 30% of worldwide seaborne energy supplies. If the Houthis heed Tehran's call and actively participate, launching waves of missiles at shipping, striking Israeli or Gulf targets, or physically attempting to seal Bab el-Mandab, the military, economic, and geopolitical implications would be profound and immediate. Militarily, the Houthis would function as a potent force multiplier for a beleaguered Iran. By diverting U.S. and Israeli air and naval assets southward to defend the Red Sea, they would stretch Allied resources thin across multiple theaters: Iran proper, Iraq, Lebanon, and now Yemen. Houthi long-range drones and missiles could target commercial fleets, U.S. warships, or even reach Israel, forcing expensive defensive intercepts and potentially drawing in more coalition forces. However, this activation carries high risks for the group itself. U.S. and Israeli strikes have already degraded Houthi capabilities in prior rounds, and a full entry could invite devastating retaliation against their command centers, weapon stockpiles, and vital ports. Analysts note that the Houthis fear leadership assassinations, internal Yemeni divisions, and supply shortages, which is why they have coordinated restraint with Tehran thus far, preserving strength for a decisive moment rather than expending it prematurely. Economically, the fallout would ripple globally within days. Oil prices, already elevated above $110 per barrel due to Hormuz disruptions, could surge toward $120 or higher as markets price in the loss of Red Sea routes. Tankers would reroute around the Cape of Good Hope, adding thousands of miles, weeks of delay, and billions in extra fuel and insurance costs. Europe, heavily reliant on Middle Eastern energy via Suez, would face acute shortages, driving inflation and energy rationing. Asia's manufacturing hubs and the United States' import-dependent supply chains would suffer knock-on effects, with container shipping rates spiking and consumer goods delayed. Global stock markets would likely tumble on fears of prolonged disruption, while strategic petroleum reserves in consuming nations would be tapped aggressively. For Iran, this economic pain inflicted on adversaries serves as leverage. By raising the global cost of the war, Tehran hopes to force Washington towards negotiations or an off-ramp, even as its own economy reels from sanctions and strikes. Geopolitically, Houthi participation would test the limits of U.S. and Israeli strategy while exposing fractures in the international response. It could draw reluctant Gulf states deeper into the conflict as attacks on shipping threaten their own exports and security. China and Russia, already conducting joint drills with Iran, might increase diplomatic pressure or offer covert support to de-escalate, viewing the choke points as vital to their Belt and Road interests. Domestically, in the U.S., a wider war with rising fuel prices could erode political support for Trump's campaign, fueling debates over endless Middle East entanglements. For the Houthis, joining fully might bolster their domestic legitimacy among anti-Western constituencies in Yemen, but risks alienating potential Saudi or Emirati partners in any future reconciliation. Long-term, it could entrench the group as Iran's most resilient proxy, even if degraded, by embedding their operations into the regional security architecture. In summary, Iran's assertion that the Houthis are just one call away from closing Bab el-Mandab is more than bluster. It is a calculated reminder of Iran's asymmetric toolkit in a war that has already defied expectations of quick victory. While the Houthis have not yet crossed the threshold as of late March 2026, the threat looms as a credible escalatory option held in reserve to maximize impact. Should they participate, the conflict would shift from a contained U.S.-Israeli operation against Iran into a multi-front, economically devastating regional war with global repercussions. Oil shocks, supply chain chaos, and heightened great power tensions would follow, underscoring how a relatively small non-state actor in Yemen can wield outsized influence through control of a narrow strait. Whether this remains a deterrent or becomes reality depends on Iran's desperation, Houthi calculations, and the international community's ability to navigate the narrowing path to de-escalation. As the war enters its fourth week, the Bab el-Mandab stands as a potential tipping point. One phone call from Tehran could decide whether the conflict remains manageable or spirals into a broader crisis that no side can easily contain.